Let's start the next and also last session of today, where we will have a combination, at least for the introduction, of our great friend Chris McCarthy, but we got also a small present and surprise for you, because over the course of the last days, I think a lot of you guys know Amazon Alexa, which is a voice-controlled system, and we kind of Alexa'd Zena's voice. Zena, are you in?
Hello.
So I would like to give the floor to Zena to introduce our dear friend Chris a bit more, because she's working with Chris closely for the last couple of years, and she's way better in this than I am. Zena.
Hello again, everybody. I've been watching your tweets very closely and with enthusiasm. You've been through an incredible 3 days, and now we're going to top it off with mine and Lucien's good friend, Chris. Chris, I mentioned you in my my discussion 2 days ago that, you know, by far, I think you really are the top health innovator in the whole world. And honestly, I know my personal spark for this space and why I got into it was, you know, the first time I heard you share your story from Kaiser Permanente 7 years ago, and I certainly haven't looked back. And so I'll hand it over to you, Chris, just to, you know, tell your story and cap us off before this group of people head back to their normal jobs in a couple days.
Thank you, Zena, for that kind intro. Who knew that I set you on your path 7 years ago? I don't really fully believe that, but it's exciting to hear such words. Hello, everybody. Just so I understand, can you all see my slides right now? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Once again, my name's Chris, and I am currently the Vice President of Strategy and Design at Hope Lab. Hope Lab is a social innovation lab where we bring together science and design to solve complex challenges for the health and well-being of young people. And I feel pretty confident knowing what I know about your program, that you too are solving complex challenges. And also from what I know about your program, that you're using the fundamentals of design to really think differently about really how to think big and change the trajectory of health and well-being and the costs that are involved and all the complexities that we're all well aware of. The second part of my life is as Executive Director of the Innovation Learning Network. And if you haven't heard about the ILN, it's an international group of about 45 organizations that have chosen to share innovation and design knowledge across systems. And previously to Hope Lab, I spent 20 years at Kaiser Permanente really thinking through what is innovation in a large, complex organization. And there are many, many, many lessons that I have learned over my 20 plus years of doing this. Some of the early lessons are a whole bunch of stuff around starting small and starting quiet, having a clear vision and a clear mission, having the right people in the right creative spaces. But perhaps one of the last pieces of the puzzle, and by no means do I think that the puzzle's complete, but one of the last puzzle pieces that has become clearer and clearer for me is this concept of innovation mindset. And that's what we're going to spend the next 40 plus minutes to close out your day there. By the way, just so you know, it's rather early for me. I'm in San Francisco. And so while you're just probably exhausted and starting to end your time, I'm just getting caffeinated. So if I yawn, it's because I'm still waking up. So please forgive me. So there's a few things I like to do today. One is really have just a tiny discussion on human-centered design, just to make sure we're all on the same page, which I'm sure that we are. Then the bulk of this will be on the innovation mindset, things that I've been thinking about and how I started aligning them to the human-centered design process. Then a case study around Kaiser Permanente's work on its medication administration system, and really less of a case study and more of how innovation mindset played a key role. And then I'm going to end with a case example, a very short example of what I think it actually means to have one of these mindsets. And then we'll end with some questions. Just as logistics, I am more than happy to be interrupted. So if something doesn't make sense, please interrupt me. Sometimes it can be hard to break in when we're on the phone. And I can't see you, by the way, because my screen is in full mode, and that prevents me from seeing your image. So you're just going to have to speak up and interrupt me on the phone. So with that, let's get started. So hopefully this framework looks familiar to you. I am told that this is the framework that you are using for your innovation and design methods. What I can say about this method that's on the screen right now is that its backbone is in every design method that I have ever come across. And what's wonderful about that is that it allows us to share knowledge across systems. It allows us to learn together. So although there are slight variations on design processes, so this one on the screen isn't my exact one, it is really, really close. And again, that allows us to connect more and evolve our tools, evolve our methods, and evolve our philosophies. And in some way, that's what this talk is all about, is around philosophies. I do think there is a missing circle, and we'll talk about that much later in the presentation about what I think that is and why it's so important for today's conversation. So I need to define what a mindset is, because it can be, it's a word that we're starting to hear more and more of. Like the word innovation and like the word design, it can be a confusing word unless we at least draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we believe mindset to be. So there are three definitions that I have found that help me stay more clear. So the first is, it's a mental attitude or an inclination. So this is what you come into a conversation with. It's how you approach a challenge. The second is a fixed state of mind. And I actually hate this definition because I actually don't believe that it's as fixed as we often think it is. But it's good to know that this is an official definition. I didn't just make these up. These are from standard dictionaries. And by knowing that some people believe it's fixed, it can help us start thinking about what can we do perhaps to unfix someone's state of mind. And the third definition is a person's way of thinking and their opinions. And I particularly like this one, because this one, I think, is one of the most open definitions. And we can see how through knowledge acquisition, through experiences, our own way of thinking and our opinions do evolve. I am not the same person that I was 7 years ago when I first met Zaina. I certainly am not the same person, and I certainly think very differently than when I started this journey 20 years ago. And so I think it's in direct conflict with the second definition of having a fixed mindset. But overall, this is the attitude. So back to definition one, this is the attitude that you're going to tackle these complex challenges. Now, this is particularly important because, unfortunately, almost all leaders in healthcare organizations, and I would even push out and say in most organizations, have settled for definition number 2, the fixed state of mind. And so that means that although there are all kinds of mindsets that we may take on and that we may evolve to, definitions 1 or 3, that usually we just naturally hang out in one kind of mindset, and that's our fixed mindset. And I think that's some of the problem that many of us face, and it's something that is addressable. We can do something about it. So rather than having a fixed mindset that you apply to every single phase of the innovation and design process, I actually think there are several mindsets. There are at least 4 mindsets that I believe are present in all innovation and design work, and I'm pretty confident that as you continue your journey, you will discover more, and you'll have your own set that you believe drive the work. So we're going to go through each one of these semi-fixed mindsets and how they can really help you push the boundaries of the work that you do. The thing to remember is that what's most important is that you don't get stuck in a single mindset. The mindset that you bring to understand, so that first circle, is going to be very different than the kind of mindset that you bring to prototyping, the red circle. And so if there's one key takeaway, is that whether you're leading an innovation team, whether you're the leader of an organization who's sponsoring innovative activities, bringing that flexibility and bringing different perspectives as you're trying to lead the specific functions of the process is imperative. So let's talk about what these mindsets are. Actually, before I go on, any questions? Are the words that I'm using, are they understandable? Is there any confusion? It's clear. All right, great. Any questions? Okay. So the first mindset, again, aligns to this first orangish piece of your design process called understand. And this is the explorative mindset. And the explorative mindset is really about being curious and about wanting to deepen the understanding of whatever challenge that we're facing. And so, and hopefully you can see how nicely the explorative mindset aligns with the understand. Now, again, the challenge is if you are not wearing the explorative mindset and you're trying to get your folks, you're trying to get your folks to understand the challenge much more broadly. And so that means the way you act and your attitudes are not aligning to what you're asking people. So I think, you know, in the United States, there's a saying like walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think that's exactly what mindset can do, is that if your mindset matches what you're asking people to do, now you're walking the walk and talking the talk. When there's misalignment, we often confuse people. So the kinds of questions and the kinds of attitudes we need to bring to the understand phase are these kind of series of questions. So if I'm leading an innovation project, I'm asking people to go out into the world and understand the challenge. The kinds of attitudes and beliefs that I want to bring to this is ensuring that we have a diverse understanding of the challenge. Am I encouraging the people who are tackling the challenge to open the lens? And so I'm asking questions that are open-ended. I'm encouraging things that are bigger and broader than what the particular challenge is zeroed in on. So for example, I'm asking the people who are doing this, are they looking outside of their own unit? Are they looking outside their own healthcare system? Are they looking outside of healthcare in general? Are they hunting for non-conventional data? These are the explorative attributes and attitudes. And if I start acting too tactical, I'm going to close that lens down. So we are in a divergent state in the world of understanding. This is when you're trying to get people to try new techniques, to really explore with the end user, really dig into the data in new and unique ways. And the leadership that's involved means being explorative, curious, you're deepening. So that's the first mindset. Now, as we move into the define stage, this is where we're starting to converge. And in some way, there's a duality of the strategic mindset. The strategic mindset is both big and broad because we need to think blue sky. And so you could be tricked into thinking that it's only divergent, but it's also about deeply clarifying and bringing together what we know. And so the kinds of questions that and the kinds of attitudes that you want to bring into leading a group of folks who are in the define function. So now you're converging is, are we really clear on what we're trying to solve here? If I think out 1, 3, and 10 years, what will happen if we actually solve this problem? And then most importantly, what are we starting to think through for these unintended consequences? Because unintended consequences are not always bad. Sometimes we call them positive deviants. So we want to pay attention to, if we solve this, might we have a positive or negative effect somewhere else? If it's negative, what are we thinking through to mitigate that? And if it's positive, how do we capitalize on that positive attribute that we never expected? So the strategic mindset, again, is a duality. Although we're starting to converge here, it is about blue sky thinking, but bringing all the clarity of what we've just discovered in the understand phase to really become more laser focused on the challenge we're about to embark on. So the third mindset aligns with the envision. This is where you're once again starting to diverge, and we're in the generative mindset. Now, this is the mindset that most people would say the innovation phase is all about. It's all about lots of ideas, being creative, it's paper, the scissors, the glue. It's all of that stuff that we imagine with kindergarten. And we're being very, very playful in trying to create the conditions so that the team who's working on this is encouraged to be playful and think big. So the kinds of attitudes and the kinds of things that we should be bringing into the envision state, are we being playful? Are we relaxed? Am I creating an environment where creativity is encouraged? And have I banned the devil's advocate? So just so that I am clear on this last attribute, does everybody understand what devil's advocate is? Does that translate? Okay, fantastic. So in this divergent state of envision, where you're trying to accumulate and create a whole bunch of ideas and concepts, being playful, creative, and ensuring that we're banning the naysayers is fundamental to allowing those ideas to flow. So just so we're not confused, the mindset is may or may not be the people who are actually brainstorming and coming up with concepts. That is a given, that if you're in this state, the kind of mindset you need is generative. But this is also at the leadership level. The leaders who are asking the team to be creative, who are charging the organization to solve this problem, when the team is in the envision stage, the leaders also have to put on the generative mindset. If they're wearing the wrong mindset, they may unintentionally close out the ability for this team to come up with great and new ideas. So that's the generative mindset that aligns with vision. And this is almost what I would call the generative A, because we're about to move into generative B. And that aligns with prototyping. And in this phase, we're actually starting to converge one more time. So we're in Envision, the mindset is all about being creative and open, and everything is possible. In prototyping, you're quickly learning your way, and so you're starting to close the lens. You're having micro failures to close the lens more and more until you get to something that you think is successful. Now, the mindset is very, very subtle, but with a minor difference. Once again, you need to create a playful state. Prototyping is hard work, and you want it to be fast. And those two things together mean you must have a playful state. You still need the creative environment. So are you creating the conditions for this team to be creative and playful? But what's subtly different here is that you also need to start gently increasing the pressure. This means that you're in order to get out of that divergent nature back into converging and to pick up the pace of prototyping, what you don't want to happen is to get stuck in prototyping that takes many months or many years to get out of. We want to cut that down to just weeks and months. And so there's a duality that are often opposed to one another. A lot of people don't see playful and creative as aligning to increasing the pressure. And I actually do think they live quite nicely together. It's just that there's a different lever that you get to pull on to continue pushing on the creative and the playful. The other major difference in this mindset is that you're starting to welcome back the devil's advocate. So in Envision, you are banning the devil's advocate. You do not want the naysayer at the table. During prototyping, you're not fully welcoming them back in the sense that their opinion starts outruling, but you want their criticism. If there's one thing that you want to bring into prototyping, that is damn good critique. And that is what's natural for the devil's advocate. So these are the basic three mindsets that I think align with the four phases of the approach that you're using. So explorative, being very curious, the curious mind, so that you can go deep into the challenge. Strategic, it's the duality of both blue sky thinking, but with precise and precision language based on what you've learned and understand. And that aligns quite nicely to define. The generative A, so that's being convergent and being playful and creative and pushing out, really aligns with starting to come up with great ideas and concepts. And then generative B, that's, again, very, very similar. You're starting to prototype, you're increasing the pressure, but you're still remaining playful, curious, and you're moving into the critique stage. So this last circle, the question mark, and I think there's a lot of debate in the world of design on whether this next circle, which we call implement in many organizations, really belongs here. And I don't really have a strong opinion on if you should have it a part of your innovation method or not. But why I think it's deeply important to recognize it is because of the mindset that's associated with implement. And that mindset is operationalize. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up is because the operational mindset is the most prevalent mindset across all employees and leaders of a healthcare organization. I think the most second prevalent is probably the strategic. But if you had to choose one when you're walking into a meeting that you might encounter, it's operationalize. And so it's important to note that if you're walking into a meeting of a bunch of new people and you're getting ready to kick off a big innovation project, and you want people to be in the understand phase where they're explorative. If you naturally assume that they're in the explorative mindset, you may set yourself up, and you may set the meeting up, and you may set the innovation project up for failure, because we didn't acknowledge that the natural state of mind, the natural fixed state of mind, is to be operational. Now, operational is normally a brilliant mindset to be in 95% of the time in healthcare. That means you're really thinking through, what do I need to be successful on an everyday basis? You're the status quo. You know what basically works, and you're trying to maintain that. We often malign that mindset. Like, if you're in the world of innovation, you're like, oh, we got to get away from operationalize. That's exactly the exact opposite of what we're trying to achieve. That is mostly true in the world of innovation and design. But eventually, you need to end up and implement. You want your ideas to scale up. And most of your organizations live inside of this mindset. So we need to more deeply understand it. Now, how you might use them in the innovation method is that this is the prime mindset to guide this kind of thinking. First of all, that's the perfect mind to help you think through, how might this actually work? Where might we poke holes in what we already know? Are my measurement people ready to go? Like, these are the folks that are really looking for the deep understanding of efficacy. And then the last two questions are my favorite questions that the operational mindset can help figure out. Am I prepared to fail? And am I even scarier, am I prepared to succeed? And it's scary because most of us in the innovation space and in the design space are not moving through each of these phases prepared to succeed. And I know that sounds a little weird, but usually after you're semi-successful, you have your encouragement, your prototype is sort of working. If by chance you are wildly successful with your prototype, is your organization actually ready to scale and implement what you've just designed? And usually the answer is no. So having this operational type mind available to you actually at every single phase, although you want to minimize it for every phase until you get to implement, can be deeply, deeply powerful. So these are the four mindsets: explorative, strategic, generative, and operational, that I think all organizations need to be much more nimble with, need to more clearly identify how to easily move and be more flexible in how we anchor ourselves in each of the phases of innovation and design. So I'm about to launch into the case study and the example, but I just want to stop for a moment and pause and ask if there's any clarifying questions or thoughts. Am I blowing your mind?
Anyone?
Okay. So the first, the case study on KP Medrite. What I love about this example is it's very contained, and it brings to life both the innovation method and the innovation mindset. Now, just to preface, I am not going to go into details on the innovation, on the research, or on the method. I'm going to stay at a higher level and focus in on how the mindsets manifested and how the mindsets helped make this more successful. So this is a project that I was the main lead on this work, and there were several sponsors that commissioned us to take on medication administration in our hospitals of Kaiser Permanente. And we were simply given the challenge. So we're kind of, we're in the pre-stage of understand. So we're not even yet in the understand stage. And we discovered that medication errors at Kaiser Permanente plateaued. Through performance improvement, they were declining, and then all of a sudden they just got stuck. And so the organization commissioned me and my team to try to break the plateau and continuing to bring medication errors down. So basically the question really boiled down to, what is the problem with giving medications in the hospital? So that's the challenge. And we started collecting conventional data. So what are the error rates? What do we know about the system? And we started compiling that, again, much more conventional ways of understanding the initial challenge. Now, as an innovation leader and having a pretty fabulous innovation sponsor, her name is Marilyn Chow, this mindset came naturally to her, and her and I partnered in really starting to think about what must we do as leaders to encourage the team to be as explorative as possible. And so what Marilyn and I did using the explorative mindset is really hold the space to be longer than what a normal team tackling a normal problem might be allowed to stay in. We also had the expectation that we would see some non-conventional and more creative data streams than just the traditional data. So the team that was embarking on this journey already knew right from the start that just having old-fashioned interviews and collecting data would not be enough. It was absolutely necessary to do the conventional stuff, but the expectation, because of our explorative mindset, was that we wanted to see that aligned with non-conventional. So what are some of the things we did? Well, if you remember back to the mindset, it's about pushing people beyond your boundaries, pushing your understanding beyond your boundaries. Well, we used Innovation Learning Network, and we connected with 3 other very prestigious healthcare organizations in the United States to share the best and worst of medication administration. So in 1 month, we scheduled 4 sessions: Partners Healthcare System, Ascension, Allegiant, Kaiser Permanente. They all agreed to share for 2 hours each the best and worst. And what that did for Kaiser Permanente, it allowed us to jumpstart our thinking from people outside of Kaiser Permanente. So again, pushing beyond the boundary. Again, we expected the team to go beyond the traditional. And so the team set up many non-healthcare explorations. They went to a grocery store. They went to a fire station. They went to pilot training school, and this is an image that we got from that pilot training school. And it turns out this is where one of the key elements of our future medication administration came from. But again, that is because the leaders held the mindset that we are demanding a much more curious exploration. It's the team that uses tools and techniques to go manifest that curiosity, but it aligned with the leadership expectation. And then finally, again, really pushing on this non-conventional creative data stream, we asked nurses what was the problem with administration, and almost always they said there is no problem. Then we would give them paper and crayon and say, imagine medication administration. And we got drawing after drawing of nurses drawing things like this. So now the conventional way of doing interviews, they said one thing, which is everything's fine. When we gave them a non-traditional way to express themselves, it was a 180-degree pivot from what they said, the exact opposite. In fact, they even wrote down the word health. That's very, very different than what the conventional data stream said. And again, having somebody draw and have that as a piece of data is not considered normal in the everyday data streams of most healthcare organizations. And so the leaders, myself and Marilyn Chow, had to hold the space that not only was this expected, but this kind of data is celebrated. So the next piece of this puzzle for this case centers around this question: how might we make it better based on what we have discovered? So this is this translation of the understand phase and really started getting into the generative mindset and really trying to, again, stay creative, stay playful, banning the devil's advocate at the beginning of generative and then welcome the devil's advocate later on in the generative cycle. And so the way this manifested, you can see on the left, this nurse, she put on a smock, she wrote down on paper, "Leave me alone," and taped that onto a smock. Now, she took her insight from the airline visit and directly translated that with paper and tape into a prototype that took her 5 minutes to create. We, the leaders, supplied her with a playful, creative environment. This is actually only one of about 200 ideas that were created over a 4-hour period with a lot of energy and a lot of playfulness and a lot of very fun facilitation. And because of this nurse's ability to express herself, and I guarantee you, had we not given her the playful space and the encouragement and everything she needed, she would not have brought this almost ridiculous looking concept to life. But thank God she did, because that eventually became the solution, which you see on the other side of your screen. And that became a standard solution across Kaiser Permanente, reducing medication errors in our hospitals, getting 105% return on investment in the first 2 years of implementation. All because we are aligning our mindsets as leaders with the innovation and design tools and techniques and phases so that this hard work can actually happen. Often there's a disharmony, again, between the mindset that the leader holds and what we expect our people to do. When they're in harmony, all of this great stuff can flow. So once again, I'm going to take a quick pause and just ask if there's any questions about this case or about the mindsets that were used. No. You guys must be exhausted. All right, so I'm going to give this case example, and this is where you're all going to actually get a chance to do a little breathing with me. So this case example comes, I have actually been working on for about 2 years now. Right before I left Kaiser Permanente, I was asked to launch a large-scale innovation initiative, probably my 12th or 15th one in my 15 years of work there. And I had been working on these mindsets for a little while. And the thing that I was stumped about was that our sponsor and our executive teams always seemed to behave in the same way. We would gather some really great executives and sponsors. They would all be in agreement that we should tackle this challenge. And for this challenge, it was the mental well-being of patients at Kaiser Permanente. And almost always, each sponsor would enter the meeting with whatever expertise and whatever approach was most natural for them. And we ended up with a lot of diversity of opinion, but almost always the leaders were acting as individuals trying to lead an initiative for an organization. So as an experiment, I want to think through how can we take a leadership group and push them to act as a group. And as in the way we moved the experiment was to align the leaders on the strategic, the explorative, the generative mindsets during the appropriate times. So never before did we try to be so explicit. And not only did we try to align them on their mindsets, we did something extraordinarily strange for them. We opened up every sponsor meeting with a meditation. And the meditation was to anchor them in the mindsets of innovation, remind them of what is their natural mindset, and then encourage them to take on the mindset that they need to discuss whatever we were about to discuss. So if we were going to be in the understand phase, we would anchor them in the explorative mindset. And so we were asking them to do things different. Not only were they asking people to do things differently, we were now asking the leaders to actually do something differently. And this beautiful harmony between what the leader says and does and what the innovator sees and does is almost perfect alignment. And to this day, that project is continuing to use the meditation to open up all of their leadership discussions about the work. I have since imported this into Hope Lab, and the board of Hope Lab now opens up its meetings using the mindsets of innovation. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the meditation. I thought it would be a wonderfully kooky way to bring our time together to a close. So I know you've all had a long day, and I'm going to ask you all to sit back and relax for a moment, take a couple of deep breaths, and just get very comfortable. And you can keep your eyes open or you can shut them, whatever you're most comfortable with. And take a couple of nice cleansing deep breaths. And as you're doing this, start thinking about your own executives. Can you imagine them doing a meditation? Does that raise your anxiety as you think about having your leadership team meditate before they tackle a complex challenge? Take another breath. The 4 leadership mindsets for innovation are the strategic, the explorative, the generative, the operational. Each is powerful in its own way. The strategic, it's the blue sky, it's the big picture, it's seeing beyond the horizon. Take a deep breath and ponder the sophisticated strategic mindset. The explorative, the curious, the deepening, the pushing past boundaries, wandering and wondering. Take another breath and ponder the ever inquisitive, explorative mindset. Ignore that. Ignore that. The generative.
It looks like that's your executive, Chris.
The paper. the scissors, the glue. It's the what if and the ahas, the desire for alternatives. Take another breath and ponder the playful generative mindset. And finally, the operational. Perhaps the most common and the most maligned of mindsets. It's the devil's advocate. It's the realist, the analyst, the value maker. Take another breath and ponder the brass tack of the operational mindset. The four mindsets are equal in need, are equal in value, but rarely equal in expression. Consider for a moment, what is your natural mindset? What mindset are you wearing when you come to this table? And what mindset should you be in as you sit at this table? Take 2 more breaths. Open your eyes. And welcome to innovation.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I figure it's not a scheduled kind of thing that your executive just called you when we were meditating. Maybe there's, can you hear me? Obviously
yes,
not.
I can hear you.
So I said it's obviously not a scheduled thing that your executive just called you during the meditation.
Oh, I'm having a hard time hearing. Say.
Wat moet ik zeggen? Bij deze webcam. So, can you hear me now loud?
Yes, I can.
So the only thing I said is that it was obvious that it was not scheduled that your executive was calling you during your meditation kind of thing.
No. Although, you got to be flexible. Shit happens.
Yeah. It seems like I'm the only executive with his own team in the same room, so I'll catch you later on that, but that's the other thing. So maybe there's some questions in the group, so let me reach out to them and then repeat them to you. Anybody with some questions for Chris? Tim?
If you can talk a bit on changing mindsets for yourself and for your team. I don't know if you can hear me. Otherwise, maybe Lucien, maybe you can repeat the question. If you can elaborate a bit on changing mindsets for yourself, from mindset to mindset, for yourself and also for your team.
Yeah, elaborate a bit on changing the mindset for yourself, but also for your team as such.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go back to the first question, or to the first set of definitions, we naturally are taught and believe that our mindsets are set, that we approach the world with our experiences and how we're taught. And I think what's more powerful is to think of mindsets as a natural state. So I naturally live in the more explorative mindset. That's just where I'm most comfortable. However, sometimes if I'm going to tackle a strategic issue, I should probably put on the strategic mindset. And so it takes more energy to get out of your natural mindset. So it is hard work. However, if I approach the challenge with the wrong mindset, I'm going to lead the people who are actually trying to tackle that challenge, and my talk and the way I walk are not going to match. And so if I want people to be creative and explore, and yet I'm demanding results, they're not going to be creative and explore. And so there's a mismatch in the mindset. So I think what to take away is that you have a natural mindset, and that with some energy and some focus, you can temporarily change your mindset. And you may only need to change it for 1 hour. If you're going to meet with your team for 1 hour and they're in the understand phase, put on your explorative mindset. When the meeting's over, put your operational mindset right back on, because that's your natural state and that's fine. So you can do this. It takes energy, and it really helps align yourself with what your team is doing.
Thank you. So oxygen is getting low in the room, and it's the end of the day. So let's catch one question for now. No, I think it's a clear point for now, Chris. Thank you very much. Again, I think
Zena had a question on the chat. I don't know if it's
Zena had a question on the chat.
Yeah.
Zena.
We don't want to skip anyone on the chat.
No, thank you very much. Zena, are you still here?
Yeah, Chris, I wonder, like, I can't imagine going to a room of executives and saying, we're going to meditate right now.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's extreme, but like, what are some strategies if one of the key executives or decision makers that your innovation team really needs to be aligned with is like so stuck in the misaligned mindset that it could actually threaten your whole project? What are some ways to overcome that?
Yeah, I think the best way to overcome that is by being proactive at the start of an initiative. So one technique is to come up with some basic ground rules that leadership will use to keep itself in check. And so I had this example with a team, and there was one sponsor who wanted to stay strategic at all times. But because we set the ground rules that the other leaders in the room could remind each other, and I, as the lead of that group, could remind others when we were slipping, it just gave us a natural, playful way to say, oh, wait a minute, you're in your strategic mindset, but we're all supposed to be in the generative mindset today. So I think that's probably the best way, is from the get-go to establish the norm on how to keep each other in check, but also to be deeply gracious and always acknowledge that we all have our natural state. And so what we don't want to do is shut the door on someone's brilliant strategic mind, but we want to ask them at the get-go with ground rules. Now, sometimes you may have to pull them aside and have a one-on-one. And the other way that we can often make some movement on this topic is to remind them what the purpose of the innovation and design work that they are commissioning. So if they are commissioning people to be creative and push the boundaries, if that's what they really believe, helping them remember what they're asking and showing them where their mindset is actually something that's unintentionally different than what we're asking people. That is I think that's a more in the moment tactic, but by far the best is set the ground rules from day one. So this leadership team has the permission to be playful and slip in and out of these mindsets.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Chris, again, thank you very much. Zena, thank you also for chiming in and being our Alexa girl for now. The video will be available also on Slack, and hope to see you soon. I think we got a call next week, something. So looking forward to that, Chris. Zena, thank you very much.
All right.
Nou, om te beginnen bedankt dat jullie dit op deze manier vol weten te houden. Weet je, wij hebben af en toe stiekem de mogelijkheid om er even uit te lopen en nog een belletje te doen en andere dingen te doen. Maar ik vind dit knap. Wij hadden bedacht, naar aanleiding van de vorige groep, dat we in plaats van 2 dagen 3 dagen zouden doen. En toen was de discussie van, nou, kan je dat wel maken? Nou, het is moeilijk, dat zien we ook. Iemand ook nog in het Engels op het eind van de rit vinden we ook moeilijk, dus daar leren we ook van. Dus ik denk dat het ook goed is om daar een keer goed naar te kijken. Maar nogmaals, ja, chapeau ook voor jullie, dat jullie dit op deze manier vol weten te houden. En ook ons scherp zien te houden in dit verhaal. Ik denk dat het goed is om nu ons ook nog heel even te realiseren dat op het moment dat allerlei dingen gebeuren, als je een telefoontje pleegt, dan hebben we het misschien soms over het apparaat wat we in onze handen hebben, of dat nou een Samsung is of een Apple. Maar als je gaat bellen, dan gebeurt er een hele hoop achter de schermen waar je geen weet van hebt. Nou, een aantal mensen hebben jullie gezien die een ongelofelijke job gedaan hebben. En ik wil zeker niet nalaten om Robin en Concha op dat gebied ongelooflijk te bedanken om de dingen voor elkaar te krijgen. Daarnaast ben ik overdag al een chaot als Monique niet voor mij een hele hoop dingen regelt. Maar juist achter de schermen, ze wilde het natuurlijk helemaal niet. Maar ook dank aan Monique die alle dingen achter de schermen op een ongelooflijke manier voor elkaar weet te krijgen. De mensen van Plurijn, hartstikke bedankt voor jullie, de manier waarop jullie de dingen hebben opgepakt. Mensen van Bliksem, ze zijn er helaas even niet, maar we hebben ongelooflijk veel plezier gehad en ook heerlijk kunnen eten hoe ze dat op hebben gedaan. Ik denk daarnaast ook onze interns, zoals we dat keurig netjes noemen, zoals Jeremy en Chantal, die ook de foto's en dergelijke hebben gemaakt. Ik wil de microfoon er even graag uiteraard ook naar Maaike geven. Nogmaals, ik heb het al eerder gezegd. Ik kom nog wel eens ergens op deze aardkloot. Ik hoor heel veel mensen over de overheid klagen over dat dingen niet kunnen. Ik geloof dat wij op dat gebied echt niks te klagen hebben. En ik ben daar rete trots op dat we dat op die manier voor elkaar krijgen. Als je nu ziet wat er ook het gebeuren is op het vlak van HIMSS, de hele informatiseringsslag. Hoe we daar als Nederland in één keer met een spurt naar die gouden plak op jacht zijn, zou ik bijna zeggen. En die gaan we echt gewoon halen met elkaar. Vind ik dat heel mooi om te zien. En wil op dat manier het ook graag even naar Maaike overdragen.
Ja, het gaat veel over mindset. Nou, binnen VWS is er ook echt een nieuwe stroom en een nieuwe mindset. We willen er echt met elkaar wat van maken. En dat is eigenlijk ook met het beginnen van een community. Dus ik zou zeggen, we hebben er al 50 gehad. Jullie zijn de volgende 50. We hebben hoge verwachtingen. Heel erg bedankt voor jullie aanwezigheid en al jullie energie. Die is nu een beetje op, maar we hebben hem gevoeld. Dus heel erg bedankt en zet hem op en tot de volgende Zoom.
En er was nog een vraag over de boekjes van Diana, die liggen voor bij de balie? Bij de balie, als mensen nog een boekje meenemen van het Prinses Maxima Centra. Kom goed thuis, kom vooral veilig thuis.